As a former Navy SEAL, I know when a situation is escalating from annoying to dangerous. But the day I spotted 3 strangers in cheap suits lurking around my house turned out to be the craziest Thursday of my life. Especially when they claimed to be HOA representatives and threatened they needed to see my 8-year-old daughter to check compliance with juvenile homeowner regulations. The biggest problem? Our neighborhood doesn't even have a homeowners association. This is the story of how I made these 3 con artists crawl to the police station with broken knees after they tried to kidnap my daughter. Where are you watching from? Comment below if you think they got what they deserved at the end of the story. My name is Galvin Preston, and for the past 6 years, I've been living the quiet life in Silver Creek, a peaceful suburban neighborhood about 40 minutes outside of Portland. After 12 years in the SEALs and losing my wife Meredith to cancer 4 years ago, all I wanted was stability for my daughter Erica and myself. I'd transitioned into cybersecurity consulting, working from home so I could be there when Erica got off the school bus. The neighborhood was perfect. Tree-lined streets, friendly neighbors, and absolutely no HOA telling us what color to paint our mailboxes. That last part was actually a selling point when I bought the house. After years of following orders in the military, the last thing I wanted was some power-hungry committee dictating my lawn care schedule. Erica had just turned 8, and she was the light of my life. She'd inherited her mother's curiosity and my stubbornness, which made for an interesting combination. Her current obsession was collecting rocks and learning about dinosaurs, and our house was filled with carefully labeled specimens and dinosaur fact sheets she'd made herself. Every evening after dinner, we'd sit on the porch while she showed me her latest findings, explaining in detail why velociraptors were actually the size of turkeys, not the monsters from movies. These quiet moments were everything to me. They were what I'd fought for during those long deployments, what I'd dreamed about during cold nights in places I still can't talk about. Our life had settled into a comfortable routine. Erica would catch the school bus at 7:30. I'd work on security assessments for various clients until she got home at 3. Then we'd have our afternoon adventures, hiking in the nearby woods, visiting the science museum, or just working on her endless stream of school projects. Weekends meant soccer practice, sleepovers with her best friend Amy from next door, and Sunday barbecues with the neighbors. It wasn't the life I'd imagined when I was 25 and invincible, but it was perfect in ways I couldn't have understood back then. The neighborhood itself was like something from a Norman Rockwell painting. Silver Creek had been developed in the late 90s by Tom Morrison, a local builder who'd made his fortune in tech and decided to create his ideal community. He'd specifically designed it without an HOA, having dealt with enough bureaucratic nonsense in Silicon Valley. The houses were all unique, the lots were generous, and the community naturally looked after itself. We had retired teachers, young families, a few other veterans, and even a former astronaut who loved to set up his telescope for neighborhood stargazing parties. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday morning in late September. My neighbor Carol Jenkins, a retired school teacher who'd become like a grandmother to Erica, knocked on my door holding a crisp white envelope. "Galvin, did you get one of these?" she asked, her usually cheerful face creased with worry. The letter was printed on expensive-looking paper with an official-looking letterhead reading Silver Creek Homeowners Association. It claimed she was in violation of Section 3.201 of the HOA bylaws for having non-compliant garden ornamentation, specifically the collection of painted rocks Erica had made for her last Christmas. The fine was $300, due within 10 days. "Carol, we don't have an HOA," I said, examining the letter closely. My cybersecurity training kicked in immediately. The letterhead looked professional, but there were subtle tells. The contact email was a generic Gmail address. The phone number had an area code from Nevada, and the website URL led to a domain registered just 2 weeks ago. When I checked online, I found no official records of any Silver Creek HOA registered with the state. Something was definitely off. That evening, I set up a neighborhood group chat and discovered that 7 other families had received similar letters, all citing different violations with fines ranging from $150 to $500. The Hendersons were fined for their trampoline being visible from the street, the Garcias for having too many potted plants on their porch, and poor Mr. Watanabe was hit with a $500 penalty for his prized koi pond, which they claim was an unauthorized water feature. Each letter was perfectly formatted, with legal-sounding language that would intimidate most people into paying up without questioning. But this wasn't my first rodeo with official-looking documents. In the SEALs, we'd been trained to spot forgeries and fake credentials, skills that transferred surprisingly well to cybersecurity. I spent that evening doing what I do best, digital reconnaissance. The domain for the supposed HOA website was registered to a company in the Cayman Islands, always a red flag. The phone number traced back to a virtual office service in Las Vegas. Even more interesting, when I did a reverse image search on the letterhead logo, I found it had been lifted from a legitimate HOA in Florida and slightly modified. Someone had put effort into this scam, but they'd made amateur mistakes that suggested they were used to targeting less tech-savvy victims. My neighbor Felix Sawyer, a local patrol officer who lived 3 houses down, was equally suspicious. "Been here 15 years, Galvin," he said over beers in my garage that weekend. This neighborhood was specifically developed without an HOA. The original builder, Tom Morrison, hated them, said they were just legalized extortion. Felix had already run the phone number through police databases and came up empty. Probably some kind of scam, but without more evidence, there's not much we can officially do. People pretending to be an HOA isn't technically illegal unless they actually take money under false pretenses. Felix was a good cop, the kind who actually cared about the community he served. We become friends over the past few years, bonding over our shared military background. He'd been in Army infantry before joining the force. His daughter Sophia was in Erica's class, and the girls often had playdates. "Keep your eyes open," he advised, finishing his beer. "These scams usually escalate. If they're bold enough to try this, they might try other things too." His words would prove prophetic sooner than either of us expected. That Wednesday evening, things took a darker turn. I was working in my home office when I noticed a black Suburban creeping slowly past my house. It stopped directly in front, and I watched through my security cameras as someone in the passenger seat took multiple photos of our property. Erica was doing homework at the kitchen table and looked up when she heard the engine idling. "Dad, why are those people taking pictures of our house?" she asked, her voice tinged with the concern only children can express so purely. I felt my protective instincts flare up. "I don't know, sweetheart, but I'm going to find out," I told her, squeezing her shoulder reassuringly. The vehicle pulled away before I could get outside, but my cameras caught the license plate clearly. That night, after Erica was asleep, I ran the plate through a contact at the DMV. The Suburban was registered to a rental company, leased to something called Property Assessment Services LLC. More digging revealed this was another shell company, registered just a month ago. The paper trail was getting interesting. I started mapping out the connections, using the same analytical tools I employed for tracking cyber threats. What emerged was a pattern I'd seen before. A network of shell companies, false identities, and money flowing through multiple accounts to obscure its origin. 2 days later, Carol called me in a panic. "Galvin, there are 3 men at my door claiming to be from the HOA. They're demanding to collect the fine in person and asking about you and Erica." I immediately pulled up my security system app and activated all external cameras. Sure enough, I could see 3 men in ill-fitting suits standing on Carol's porch. The leader, a heavy-set man with slick-back graying hair, was gesturing aggressively while holding what appeared to be some kind of official-looking binder. The 2 others flanked him. One was tall and muscular, with a prison yard physique, while the other was younger, skinny, and constantly looking around nervously. I called Carol back. "Don't let them in. Tell them you need to verify their credentials first. I'm coming over." But by the time I reached her house 30 seconds later, they were already walking toward their vehicle, the same black Suburban from before. They saw me approaching and stopped. The leader stepped forward with a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Preston, I presume? I'm Edward Dawson, president of the Silver Creek HOA. We've been trying to reach you about several violations on your property." His voice had that fake friendly tone I recognized from every con artist I'd ever encountered. "There is no Silver Creek HOA," I said flatly, positioning myself between them and my house where Erica was. "I suggest you leave before this becomes a police matter." But Dawson wasn't easily deterred. He opened his binder, revealing what looked like official documents complete with city seals and signatures. "I understand there might be some confusion. The HOA was recently established through proper channels. We have all the documentation right here." He patted his binder meaningfully. "In fact, we have particular concerns about your property. As a single parent, there are additional regulations regarding child welfare and property maintenance standards that apply to your situation." The tall one, who I later learned was named Marcus Reed, shifted slightly to block my view of their vehicle, while the nervous younger one, Tyler Watts, was typing something rapidly on his phone. Every instinct from my years in special operations was screaming that these men were threats. I noticed Marcus had prison tattoos peeking out from his collar, and Tyler kept glancing at my house with an intensity that made my skin crawl. They weren't just scammers, they were something worse. "Listen carefully," I said, my voice dropping to the tone that used to make junior sailors snap to attention. "You're going to get in your vehicle and leave. If I see you near my property or speaking to my neighbors again without a police escort, we're going to have a problem." Dawson's mask slipped completely then, his eyes hardening. "Mr. Preston, you're making a serious mistake. The HOA has legal authority to investigate properties where minor children reside. We have concerns about the welfare of your daughter. Given your background," he emphasized the last word, implying he knew about my military service. "We'll be back tomorrow with the proper authorities if necessary." They left, but not before Tyler snapped several more photos of my house, making sure to angle his phone toward Erica's bedroom window. As their Suburban disappeared around the corner, I felt a cold rage building in my chest. They had just threatened my daughter. In my world, that crossed a line from which there was no return. I went back inside to find Erica standing by the window, her homework forgotten. "Dad, those men seemed angry. Did we do something wrong?" The worry in her voice nearly broke my heart. "No, Princess. Some people are just bullies who try to scare others. But you know what we do with bullies?" She smiled slightly. "Do we stand up to them?" "That's right, and Daddy's very good at standing up to bullies." That night, after Erica was asleep, I activated what I called my war room, a secure setup in my basement office where I conducted my most sensitive cybersecurity work. Using a combination of OSINT, open source intelligence tools, dark web searches, and some gray hat techniques I'd picked up over the years, I began a deep dive into our 3 visitors. The first thing I did was run their faces through various image recognition databases. My security cameras had captured clear shots, and facial recognition led me to social media profiles, arrest records, and news articles spanning several states. Edward Dawson's digital footprint was extensive and disturbing. Beyond his revoked real estate license and fraud convictions, I found posts on underground forums where he bragged about his social engineering skills. He'd written detailed guides on how to intimidate homeowners, which psychological pressure points to exploit, and how to create convincing fake documents. In one post from 6 months ago, he mentioned testing a new approach with military families because they were used to following orders from authority figures. The fact that he was specifically targeting veterans made my blood boil. Marcus Reed's background check revealed connections to organized crime in California. Through court documents available online, I found testimony linking him to a ring that specialized in distressed property acquisition, a euphemism for forcing people out of their homes through intimidation. Cross-referring his known associates with property records showed a pattern. Neighborhoods would experience a wave of break-ins, vandalism, and harassment, followed by below-market cash offers from mysterious buyers. Reed was the muscle that made residents eager to sell and leave. Tyler Watts was the tech specialist, and his digital trail was ironically the hardest to follow. He knew how to cover his tracks, but I found his mistakes in the metadata of the HOA website. The PDF documents on the site contained author information linking to his real name, and from there I traced his activities across multiple hacking forums. He specialized in something called municipal spoofing, creating fake government websites and documents that looked official enough to fool most people. His tools included templates for fake city seals, letterheads, and even email systems that mimicked government domains. The real breakthrough came when I accessed Tyler's cloud storage through a vulnerability in his 2-factor authentication. Inside, I found a treasure trove of evidence, detailed dossiers on every family in Silver Creek, including financial information, daily routines, and identified pressure points. My family's file was marked Priority Target, Single Parent, Military Background, Young Child. They had photos of Erica at school, documentation of my wife's death, and notes about using child welfare concerns as leverage. The level of surveillance they'd conducted was chilling. But the most damaging discovery was a folder labeled Previous Operations. Inside were records of similar scams in Riverside, California, Tempe, Arizona, and Henderson, Nevada. Each operation followed the same pattern: fake HOA formation, escalating fines and harassment, strategic targeting of vulnerable residents, and eventually forced sales at below-market prices. I found spreadsheets tracking their success rates and profit margins. In total, they displaced 47 families and netted over $12 million in profits for their mysterious backers. The backers trail. led to Apex Investments and Benedict Griffith. Through a series of shell companies and offshore accounts, I traced the money flow. Griffith wasn't just hiring these criminals. He was running a sophisticated operation that stayed just barely on the legal side of fraud. By using the HOA structure, they could hide behind administrative actions and community standards enforcement. It was brilliant in its malevolence. I also found email exchanges between Griffith and Dawson discussing their Silver Creek project, with Griffith explicitly instructing them to focus on the military family with the young daughter. They always fold when children are involved. I spent the next several hours creating what I called my evidence packages. The first was a comprehensive digital archive with everything I'd found, encrypted and uploaded to multiple secure cloud services with deadman switches. If anything happened to me, this information would automatically be sent to the FBI, local law enforcement, 3 major news outlets, and a dozen cybersecurity colleagues. The second package was physical. Printed documents, USB drives with backup data, and detailed timelines of the conspiracy, all stored in a safety deposit box with instructions for Carol to access if needed. My SEAL training had taught me that intelligence without action was useless. I needed to turn this information into a tactical advantage. Using the access I'd gained to their systems, I planted tracking software on all their devices. I could now monitor their communications in real time, see their location data, and even activate their microphones remotely. This wasn't strictly legal, but neither was threatening my daughter. I also set up alerts for specific keywords: Erica, Preston, school, welfare check, anything that might indicate immediate danger to my family. The next phase was creating false trails to mislead them. I crafted fake financial documents showing significant debt and mortgage issues, then accidentally left them visible during a video call I knew Tyler was monitoring. I created a false narrative about an impending work trip that would leave Erica home with a babysitter. Perfect bait for their kidnapping plan. Every piece of disinformation was carefully designed to lead them into my trap while keeping Erica actually safe. I also reached out to my network of former special operations contacts. Through encrypted channels, I shared what I'd discovered and asked them to check for similar operations in their areas. The responses were eye-opening. Similar scams were running in military-heavy communities across the country. My old swim buddy from Bud/S had encountered a fake HOA in Virginia Beach. A Delta operator I'd worked with in Afghanistan reported the same in Fort Bragg. We were looking at a nationwide operation targeting military families. With the digital battlefield prepared, I turned to physical security. I installed hidden cameras with infrared capabilities, motion sensors with military-grade sensitivity, and even pressure plates under key floorboards. Each device fed into a central monitoring system with AI-powered threat detection. If anyone entered my property with hostile intent, I'd know their exact location, movement patterns, and even their heart rate through thermal imaging. The system was similar to what we'd use for compound security in high-threat environments. The final piece was psychological warfare. I began leaving subtle signs that I was on to them. During their surveillance of my house, I'd occasionally wave at their hidden cameras. When Tyler tried to hack my home network, he found a honeypot server with a file named I_C_U_Tyler containing his own home address. When Marcus followed me to the grocery store, I had a loud phone conversation about my friends from the teams who love handling bullies. The goal was to make them nervous, to push them into making mistakes. By the time I finished my preparations, I had transformed from a concerned father into something far more dangerous, a trained operator, with complete intelligence superiority over his enemies. They thought they were hunting a vulnerable single parent. Instead, they'd walked into the kill zone of someone who'd spent over a decade perfecting the art of warfare. They'd threatened my daughter, invaded my community, and destroyed innocent lives for profit. Now, they were about to learn why Navy SEALs have a reputation for being the most dangerous men on the planet when protecting what matters most. I also discovered something that made my blood run cold. Cross-referencing their known associates led me to a connection with Apex Investments, a real estate development company that had been buying up properties all over Portland's suburbs. The CEO, Benedict Griffith, had a reputation for aggressive tactics in acquiring land for development. His company had made several lowball offers to homeowners in Silver Creek over the past year, all of which had been rejected. It seemed Griffith had decided on a new strategy: use Dawson's crew to pressure residents into selling by creating a hostile living environment through a fake HOA. But there was more. Buried in court documents from Griffith's previous ventures, I found references to properties acquired through distressed sales after the homeowners faced various legal troubles. In each case, there were patterns, fake code violations, harassment, and in 2 instances, allegations of child endangerment that forced quick sales. The cases were spread across different states, making the pattern hard to spot unless you were specifically looking for it. They'd refined their playbook over years, and now they were bringing it to Silver Creek. I spent the rest of the night fortifying our digital and physical security. I upgraded our alarm system, added more cameras with night vision capabilities, and set up motion sensors around the property perimeter. I also created detailed dossiers on our 3 antagonists, complete with photos, criminal histories, and known associates. These I encrypted and sent to a cloud server, with instructions to forward everything to Felix, the FBI, and several journalist contacts if I didn't check in every 24 hours. Old habits from my SEAL days, always have a contingency plan. The next morning, I noticed something troubling. The crossing guard who usually helped Erica and other kids across the street to the school bus stop was absent, replaced by a man I didn't recognize. He wore the standard vest and held the stop sign, but something about his posture and the way he kept scanning the area set off alarm bells. I decided to drive Erica to school myself. As we passed the crossing guard, I recognized him from the photos I'd studied all night. He was an associate of Marcus Reed, with his own criminal record for assault and stalking. At the school, I walked Erica to her classroom, something I hadn't done since the first week of kindergarten. Her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, seemed surprised to see me. "Mr. Preston, how nice of you to bring Erica in today." I pulled her aside quietly. "Mrs. Patterson, I need you to be extra vigilant about who picks Erica up. Only myself, Carol Jenkins, or my sister Jenny are authorized. If anyone else shows up, even with official-looking paperwork, please call me immediately." She must have seen something in my expression because she nodded seriously. "Of course. Is everything all right?" "Just taking some extra precautions," I replied, handing her a card with my direct cell number. That afternoon, I picked Erica up from school myself instead of letting her take the bus. Call it parental intuition or tactical awareness, but something felt off. Good thing I did. As we were leaving, I spotted Tyler sitting in a rental car across the street from the school, photographing students as they left. When he saw me notice him, he quickly drove away, but not before I got several clear photos of him and his vehicle. This was escalating fast, and they were getting bolder. That evening, I called a family meeting with Erica. She was old enough to understand basic safety concepts without being terrified. "Sweetheart, you know how we have fire drills at school?" She nodded. "Well, we're going to practice some safety drills at home, too. If I ever tell you to go to your special spot, what do? We'd established this protocol after Meredith died. Erica's special spot. There was a reinforced closet in my office with a direct line to 911 and enough supplies for 24 hours. I go inside, lock the door, press the red button to call the police, and don't come out until you say the code word," she recited. "What's our code word?" I asked. "Dinosaur pancakes," she said with a small smile. It was what Meredith used to make for her on Sunday mornings. That night, I made a difficult decision. "Hey, Princess," I said to Erica after dinner, "how would you like to spend a few days with Aunt Jenny? She's been asking when you'd visit again." Erica was excited. My sister lived near Seattle and always spoiled her rotten. "Can I bring my rock collection to show her?" she asked eagerly. "Of course, pack your favorites." But as I helped her pack, I felt a cold fury building. These men had made my daughter unsafe in her own home. That was unforgivable. In the SEALs, we had a saying, "Never start a fight, but always finish it." They had started this. I will finish it. After dropping Erica at my sister's the next day, I put the second phase of my plan into action. I called Felix and 2 other neighbors I trusted, both veterans like myself. Jim Rodriguez had been a Marine Scout sniper, now running a successful landscaping business. Pete Williams was a former Air Force Security Forces officer, currently working as a private investigator. "Gentlemen," I said when they gathered in my garage, "we have a situation." I laid out everything I'd discovered, showing them the dossiers I'd compiled. Their expressions grew darker with each revelation. "These aren't just scammers," Pete observed, studying the surveillance photos. "This is an organized crime operation." Jim nodded grimly. "The fake crossing guard, surveillance of the school, they're mapping out vulnerabilities for a snatch and grab. Having confirmed my worst suspicions, we developed a tactical plan. They'll make their move soon," I predicted, "probably when they think I'm vulnerable, alone, and unaware." Felix had been quietly listening. "Legally, we need them to commit an actual crime before we can act. Attempted fraud isn't enough for serious charges." I smiled coldly. They'll commit a crime. We just need to make sure we're ready when they do. The trap required careful preparation. I installed hidden cameras throughout the house, separate from my visible security system. These fed to a hardened recording system in my basement with automatic cloud backup. I also positioned some expensive-looking bags near windows where they'd be visible from outside, bait for thieves who thought the house was empty. Inside the bags were GPS trackers and die packs similar to those used by banks. If they took the bait, we'd be able to track their movements and mark them for identification. I also prepared the ground floor tactically. I removed anything they could use as a weapon, created natural choke points that would funnel them into areas with the best camera coverage, and set up subtle obstacles that would slow their movement without being obvious. The piano bench was positioned to block the quickest route to the stairs. A Persian rug was placed where someone rushing would likely slip. Small details that would give me tactical advantages in a confrontation. For the final touch, I set up Erica's room with a child-sized mannequin in her bed, dressed in her favorite unicorn pajamas with a blonde wig matching her hair color. Motion-activated cameras would capture anyone approaching the bed from multiple angles. If they were planning what I suspected, they'd incriminate themselves thoroughly before realizing they'd been played. I also left a half-finished glass of chocolate milk and some of Erica's homework on her desk, creating the illusion she'd just gone to bed. Then I began my performance. Over the next 2 days, I maintained my normal routine but added subtle changes. I made phone calls within earshot of the hidden listening device I'd found in my mailbox, mentioning that Erica was back home and that I'd be working late on Thursday night. I complained loudly to Carol about the security system glitching, saying I was waiting for a technician to come fix it Friday morning. I even staged a conversation with a fake client about an urgent cybersecurity issue that would keep me at my computer all Thursday night. I didn't have to wait long. 3 nights later, at approximately 2 a.m., my perimeter alerts started going off. I watched from my hidden position in the garage as the black Suburban rolled up with its headlights off. All 3 men got out, dressed in dark clothing. Tyler was carrying what looked like electronic equipment, Marcus had a crowbar, and Dawson was holding a flashlight, and those same official-looking documents. They approached my front door cautiously, constantly scanning the street for witnesses or patrol cars. I could hear their whispered conversation through the external microphones. "Are you sure about this?" Tyler asked nervously. "The kid's definitely here. I saw them through the window earlier. Security system's on the same network as the cameras. I can bypass it in 30 seconds. Dawson's response was chilling. Griffith wants results. Either this military hero sells voluntarily, or we make sure he has bigger problems to worry about. Child Services takes custody of unattended minors all the time. Once we have the girl, he'll sign anything. I let them work on my front door, knowing they'd trigger the silent alarm I'd installed as a backup. True to his word, Tyler managed to defeat my electronic lock in under a minute. As they entered my house, I slipped out of the garage and around to the back, coordinating with Felix and my other neighbors via encrypted radio. "They're in," I whispered. "Everyone holds a position until they fully commit." Inside, I could hear them moving through the ground floor, gathering the bags I'd planted as bait. "Check the home office," Dawson ordered. "Get any financial documents you can find. Banking information, investment accounts, anything we can use." I heard drawers opening, papers rustling. They were building a profile for identity theft on top of everything else. Then came the words that sealed their fate. "Check upstairs for the girl. Remember, if anyone asks, we were conducting an emergency welfare check as authorized HOA representatives. The documentation is all in order." They climbed the stairs slowly, Marcus leading with his crowbar ready. Tyler followed with a small camera, documenting everything for official HOA records, as Dawson put it. They reached Erica's door, which I'd left slightly ajar with a nightlight providing just enough illumination to create shadows. "She's in there," Tyler whispered, pointing to the shape under the covers. "Remember, quick and quiet. We get her to the vehicle before anyone notices." As Tyler reached for what he thought was my sleeping daughter, I stepped out of the shadows at the top of the stairs. "The biggest mistake of your lives was thinking you could touch my little girl," I said quietly. The shock on their faces was almost comical. For a split second, nobody moved. Then chaos erupted. Marcus recovered first, pulling out a knife and lunging at me with a snarl. 12 years of close-quarters combat training kicked in automatically. I sidestepped his rush, grabbed his wrist, and applied a textbook joint lock that ended with a sickening crack as his elbow hyperextended. Marcus screamed, dropping the knife. I followed up with a precisely placed kick to the side of his knee, targeting the lateral collateral ligament. The joint buckled sideways with an audible pop and Marcus collapsed, his leg unable to support his weight. As he fell, I stripped the knife from his loosened grip and sent it skittering across the floor, well out of reach. His howls of pain echoed through the house, but I was already moving to the next threat. Tyler tried to run past me down the stairs, but I caught him with a perfectly placed heel kick to the back of his knee. There's a specific spot, just below the patella, where the anterior cruciate ligament is most vulnerable. The human knee isn't designed to bend backward, but that's exactly what Tyler's did. He went down screaming, his leg folding in a direction that made even me wince slightly. His camera equipment scattered across the floor, memory cards spilling out like digital confetti. That left Dawson, who had managed to pull out a small pistol with shaking hands. "You're assaulting HOA officials in the course of their duties," he stammered, trying to maintain his facade even now. The gun wavered as he pointed it vaguely in my direction. "This is all being recorded. You'll lose everything. Your house, your daughter, everything." I actually laughed, a cold sound that made him flinch. "I spent over a decade dealing with real threats, Dawson. You think that pea shooter scares me?" When he hesitated, I moved. SEAL training teaches you that action beats reaction every time. I closed the distance faster than his untrained reflexes could track, my hand clamping onto his wrist and twisting. The gun went flying and I heard fingers snap like dry twigs. Before he could process the pain, I drove my knee into his thigh, targeting the femoral nerve. His leg went numb instantly, and as he started to drop, I grabbed his shoulder and drove my other knee directly into his kneecap with calculated force. The patella shattered with a sound like a walnut cracking. Dawson joined his associates on the floor, clutching his destroyed knee and whimpering. I kicked the gun away and surveyed the scene. 3 would-be kidnappers, all incapacitated, all captured perfectly on multiple camera angles. The entire encounter had taken less than 30 seconds. "Gentlemen," I said conversationally, pulling out zip ties from my back pocket, "I believe you've made a series of poor life choices." Felix and my neighbors entered through the front door just as I was securing the 3 intruders. The amount of evidence we'd collected was overwhelming. Recorded confessions, stolen property, attempted kidnapping of what they thought was a child, breaking and entering, assault with a deadly weapon, and impersonating government officials. The cameras had caught everything in high definition from multiple angles. But I wasn't done yet. The intelligence operative in me knew that broken bones heal, but broken spirits and destroyed reputations last forever. "Here's what's going to happen," I told them as they writhed on my floor. "You can crawl to the police station, or I can call 911 and tell them 3 armed men broke into my home to kidnap my daughter. Given your records, how do you think that'll play out in court?" Marcus was crying now, his tough guy image completely shattered, along with his elbow. Tyler had vomited from the pain, his skinny frame trembling. But it was Dawson I focused on, the ringleader who had orchestrated this whole scheme. "You know what happens to child predators in prison, Edward?" I asked quietly, crouching next to him. "Your boy Tyler there was recording everything, talking about taking my 8-year-old daughter. How do you think that's going to play in Gen Pop?" His face went even paler, if that was possible, but we can make this cleaner. You crawl to the station, confess everything, including who hired you, and maybe the prosecutor goes easier on the charges. Maybe you're just thieves and con men, not attempted kidnappers. The calculation was visible in his eyes, even through the pain. Prison was bad enough, but prison with a child predator jacket was a death sentence. "Griffith," he gasped. "Benedict Griffith hired us, 250 grand, to drive down property values, force sales. The kid was just leveraged. We weren't really going to—" I cut him off. "Save it for your confession. Now choose, call." They chose to crawl. The sight of 3 grown men in torn suits crawling down the middle of Maple Street at 3 a.m. became legendary in Silver Creek. Neighbors came out to watch, some recording on their phones, others just shaking their heads in disgust. Carol brought out cookies and hot coffee for the impromptu neighborhood watch gathering. "Always knew you were one of the good ones, Galvin," she said, patting my arm. "This man picked the wrong neighborhood and definitely the wrong father to mess with." Word spread quickly through our community network. By the time the 3 had crawled a block, there were dozens of neighbors lining the street. Some shouted insults, others just watched in silent satisfaction as justice was served. Jim Rodriguez set up lawn chairs and offered commentary like it was a parade. "Look at that form on the big one," he observed. "Really favoring that left elbow. Good technique on that joint lock, Galvin." Pete Williams was documenting everything with his professional camera, making sure we had evidence from every angle. The crawl took over an hour. 6 blocks of asphalt, their knees leaving bloody trails on the pavement. Dawson tried to stop several times, but the gathered crowd wouldn't let him. "Keep moving, con man," someone shouted. "You wanted to be in charge of our neighborhood? Now you can inspect the streets up close." By the time they reached the police station, their expensive suits were shredded, their knees were raw and bloody, and their spirits were completely broken. Detective James Rodriguez was waiting with handcuffs and a growing smile. "Mr. Preston," he said as I handed over my evidence files, "I think you just solved about 15 open cases across 3 states." The detective had been tracking similar HOA scams for months, but hadn't been able to connect all the dots. My dossiers, combined with the video evidence and Dawson's blubbered confession, created an airtight case that would ripple through multiple jurisdictions. The aftermath was swift and satisfying. Dawson's full confession, recorded as he lay on my floor, convinced his kneecap would never work again, implicated Benedict Griffith directly. Turns out Griffith had paid them $250,000 to terrorize Silver Creek residents into selling their homes cheap. But Dawson went further, detailing similar operations in 6 other developments across 3 states. With multiple federal agencies now involved, Griffith's empire crumbled within weeks. The investigation revealed the full scope of the operation. Griffith had been using Dawson's crew for years, targeting neighborhoods with specific demographics: older residents, single parents, recent immigrants, anyone who might be intimidated by official-looking documents and legal threats. They'd forced dozens of families from their homes, always staying just within legal gray areas until they'd tried to grab my daughter. That was their fatal mistake. Crossing from fraud into attempted kidnapping brought the full weight of federal law enforcement down on them. Griffith tried to flee, but was arrested at the Canadian border with $5 million in cryptocurrency and a fake passport. His laptop, seized during the arrest, contained detailed plans for Silver Creek and several other neighborhoods. He'd already pre-sold our properties to developers, promising delivery within 6 months. The trial was almost anticlimactic. With the amount of evidence I'd collected, plus additional evidence from the federal investigation, their public defenders convinced all 4 to take plea deals rather than face trial. The sentencing was everything I'd hoped for. Edward Dawson got 15 years for attempted kidnapping, fraud, and racketeering. The judge called him a predator who used people's trust in authority to terrorize families. Marcus Reed got 20 years for assault with a deadly weapon, violation of parole, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. His extensive criminal history worked against him. Tyler Watts got 7 years, but has to register as a sex offender for his attempted crimes against what he thought was a minor. The judge specifically noted his disturbing focus on documenting a child's bedroom. Benedict Griffith received 25 years for conspiracy, racketeering, fraud, and attempted kidnapping by proxy. The judge called his crimes a calculated assault on the American dream and ordered full restitution to all victims. His company, Apex Investments, went bankrupt after the scandal broke. Several other executives faced charges for related schemes in different cities. The lots they had already purchased in Silver Creek were sold to a local conservation group, which turned them into a community garden and playground. The neighborhood response was overwhelming. We did end up forming a neighborhood association, not an HOA, just a group that organizes block parties and looks out for each other. Felix was elected president, and his first official act was to ban the formation of any HOA in perpetuity. We established a neighborhood watch, set up a secure communication network, and created a fund to help any resident facing legal intimidation. The Silver Creek model has since been adopted by dozens of communities nationwide. Erica came home to find her rock collection featured in the new community garden with a plaque reading, "Erica's Geological Wonders." She still talks about her vacation at Aunt Jenny's, blissfully unaware of how close she came to real danger. We've had conversations about safety and awareness, but I've shielded her from the darker details. Some innocence is worth preserving, and she has plenty of time to learn about the world's dangers. These days, life has returned to normal, mostly. I still work in cybersecurity, but I've added a side consulting service helping neighborhoods identify and prevent HOA fraud. It's amazing how common these scams are becoming. I've testified before state legislatures about the need for stricter regulations on HOA formation and clearer penalties for HOA fraud. My story has been featured in several true crime podcasts, usually titled something like "The Seal Who Made Criminals Crawl." Irene Thorne and I grab coffee sometimes to discuss local property law changes, and she's teaching me about city council politics. She was instrumental in passing new city ordinances requiring extensive public notification and resident approval before any HOA can be established. Maybe there's something developing between us, maybe not. I'm in no rush. The important thing is that Erica is safe, our community is stronger, and would-be predators know that Silver Creek is. My military brothers check in regularly, proud of how I handled the situation. Still got it, Navy, Jim likes to say. Once a SEAL, always a SEAL. But I know the truth. This wasn't about my training or my skills. This was about a father protecting his daughter and a community standing together against those who would prey on the vulnerable. The physical confrontation lasted seconds. The real victory was in the preparation, the investigation, and the neighborhood's unity. Last month, a door-to-door salesman came through the neighborhood selling home security systems. He made it about 3 houses before Carol intercepted him with a plate of cookies and a very specific warning about what happens to unwelcome visitors who disturb our peace. The poor guy practically ran back to his car. As he drove away, Erica looked up from her newest rock specimen and asked, "Dad, why do people keep saying you broke some bad guy's knees?" I ruffled her hair and smiled. "Just a story, princess, but remember what I always tell you. Nobody messes with our family." She nodded seriously, then went back to examining her rock. "Cool. Hey, did you know that Stegosaurus had a brain the size of a walnut?" I laughed, treasuring her innocence. "Tell me more about dinosaur brains, sweetheart." And she did, for the next hour, while I half listened and kept one eye on the street, always watching, always ready. Some nights I still check the security cameras more than necessary. Old habits die hard, and once you've seen how quickly safety can be threatened, you never quite relax completely. But when I hear Erica laughing with the neighborhood kids, when I see Carol teaching them to plant flowers, when Felix waves from his patrol car, I know we did the right thing. Sometimes justice comes from the courts, sometimes from the community, and sometimes from a father who refuses to let anyone harm his child. And if that means a few criminals have to crawl on their bellies through the streets, well, I can live with that. The story of the Silver Creek Crawl, as it came to be known, spread far beyond our neighborhood. It became a cautionary tale in criminal circles and an inspiration to communities facing similar threats. Property assessors and HOA representatives now think twice before approaching our neighborhood, and they always call ahead. We've had news crews, documentary makers, and even a Hollywood producer express interest in our story, but we've politely declined. Some stories are better left as local legends. 3 years later, the scars have faded, both on the street where they crawled and in our community's collective memory. The playground built on Griffith's seized lots is always full of children's laughter. Erica's rock collection has grown into a full-fledged geology club at school. She's 11 now, more aware of the world's dangers but still wonderfully optimistic. Sometimes she asks about that night, having picked up pieces of the story from classmates. I told her age-appropriate truths, that some bad men tried to scare our neighbors, and I stopped them. "Did you really make them crawl to jail, Dad?" she asked recently. I considered my answer carefully. "Sometimes, sweetheart, people who try to hurt others need to understand what it feels like to be powerless. They needed to feel what they made others feel." She thought about this, then nodded. "Like when Billy was pushing smaller kids at recess and the principal made him apologize to each one?" "Exactly like that," I agreed, marveling at her insight, "but bigger consequences for bigger bullies." In the end, that's what it was all about, consequences. For too long, men like Griffith and Dawson had operated without them, preying on the vulnerable, exploiting people's trust and authority. They'd forgotten that some people fight back, that some communities stand together, that some fathers will do anything to protect their children. They learned these lessons the hard way, on their hands and knees, 6 blocks of asphalt teaching them what all their schemes and frauds never could. That justice sometimes wears work boots instead of a robe, and that the shortest distance between crime and punishment is sometimes measured in bloody knee prints on pavement. Where did you watch this from? Comment broken knees if you think they deserved what they got. And stay safe out there, folks. You never know when a fake HOA might come knocking at your door, but now you know what to look for, and maybe, just maybe, you'll be ready if they do. Remember, sometimes the best defense isn't just knowing your rights, it's knowing when someone's trying to take them away. And if you ever see someone taking pictures of your house, asking strange questions about your children, or pushing papers that don't feel right, trust your instincts. They're usually right, and it's better to be safe than sorry. Stay vigilant, protect your family, and never let anyone make you feel unsafe in your own home. Because home isn't just where we live, it's what we're willing to fight for.